All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously creepy stuff? We're talking about hide and seek, but not the fun kind.
Oh yeah, definitely not the kind we played as kids.
Exactly. These are the stories you guys sent in, the ones that make you wonder if maybe...
If maybe we shouldn't have played in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what happens when this childhood game takes a seriously dark turn?
Well, let's find out.
So we're going deep into a YouTube video. It's
Right.
called Two More True Hide-and-Seek Horror Stories.
Okay.
And it's from the channel Mr. Nightmare.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that channel.
Right, so the title's Not Kidding Around.
Oh.
And you want to know what makes these stories stick with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are they so unsettling? So let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Okay, story number 1 is called The Unexplained Grab in the Woods.
Okay.
Picture this, a bunch of 11-year-olds hanging out in a cul-de-sac,
All right.
woods behind the houses Friday night,
Classic.
like classic suburban setting,
Yeah.
right? And the storyteller decides to hide under a green blanket right at the edge of the woods.
It's already kind of creepy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And what gets me is that they chose a blanket. Like,
It's not really a good hiding spot.
no, it's not, like you said, it's already kind of creepy, but it also emphasizes how vulnerable they are.
Right, like a kid just trying to disappear completely.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really scary.
Oh.
So they're under the blanket, and suddenly 2 hands clamp down on their shoulders hard.
Oh, God.
Like, really hard. They describe the sounds, the pressure, even the pain. It's so vivid.
That's terrifying.
It is, right? And no one admits to doing it. Nobody.
So they don't know who grabbed them?
No, and that's what makes it even creepier.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, some unknown force just reached out.
And grabbed them.
Yeah, exactly. And after that,
Did they stop playing?
they put up a fence between the yards and the woods.
Wow.
And everyone keeps playing hide and seek,
Really?
but with flashlights and the backyard lights on.
So the rules changed.
Totally. Like, the world just got a little bit scarier.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's move on to the second story.
Okay.
It's called The Unsettling Neighbor.
Ooh. That title's already creepy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And this one's different right from the start.
How so?
Well, the storyteller immediately gets this bad vibe from the new mom next door and her son, CJ.
Okay, so it's not just like a random stranger. It's someone they kind of know.
Yeah, but not, well, and CJ is seriously persistent about playing hide and seek.
Okay.
It's not just a kid wanting to have fun. It's like, well, you used the word unsettling earlier,
Yeah.
but it's more than that.
Right, like there's something else going on.
Exactly, and it just escalates from there. Like, CJ keeps pushing the boundaries.
Like he's not taking no for an answer.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to force the storyteller into the situation they want no part of.
That's so uncomfortable.
I know, and then it gets terrifying. CJ appears in the storyteller's bedroom at night.
Oh my God.
Like, talk about a violation of personal space.
Seriously, in their bedroom at night.
It's like he's invading this sacred space.
Yeah, and the fact that it happens at night just makes it so much worse.
Right. The darkness adds this whole other layer of fear.
Absolutely.
Like, you're in bed supposed to be safe, and suddenly he's just there.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It is. And
Yeah.
the story doesn't shy away from how terrifying it was for both the storyteller and their dad.
Oh, wow. So the dad saw it too.
Yeah, he witnessed it, and even with a restraining order against CJ and his mom,
What?
they remain living next door.
Oh,
And every night, CJ stares from his window.
so they can't escape him?
No, it's like this constant, inescapable presence, this lingering sense of unease.
God, that's awful.
It is. So we have 2 very different stories, both rooted in hide and seek, but exploring these distinct fears.
Yeah, one is like the fear of the unknown, the lurking danger.
And the other is the fear of a specific person, a kid who's just way out of line.
Right, but what connects them is this violation of safe spaces.
Yeah, like the woods, the bedroom places where we expect to feel secure, and then suddenly they're not.
And both stories show how one event can just shatter your sense of safety and leave you with this lingering anxiety.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, we've dissected the stories, and started to understand what makes them so creepy.
Yeah.
But let's take it a step further. You, the listener, wanted to understand why hide and seek of all games lends itself so well to horror. What do you think is at the heart of that?
Well, I think it's because
Like, why this game?
when you're hiding, you're so vulnerable.
Right.
You're exposed hoping not to be found.
It's not just about being seen, it's about being caught.
Exactly, and maybe even worse, being helpless.
That's a brilliant insight. It's like hide and seek becomes this metaphor for all the ways we try to hide from our fears to control our environment, to
Right.
feel safe.
And these stories, they just twist that completely.
Yeah, they exploit that vulnerability and turn this childhood pastime into something terrifying.
It's like they're saying all those places you thought were safe, they're not.
Right, and all those things you try to hide from, they can still find you.
Yeah.
All right, let's pause there. We've unpacked the stories, explored the psychology of fear and vulnerability, and started to understand why hide and seek makes for such effective horror.
Okay.
But there's still so much to uncover. When we come back, we'll delve even deeper into the techniques used to amplify the creep factor
Okay.
and discuss the cultural significance of hide and seek. So stay tuned.
So we were talking about vulnerability.
Right, and how these stories really exploit that.
Yeah, like it's not just about hiding, it's also about where you're hiding.
Yeah, the locations are so important.
They pick these places that should be safe, familiar.
Yeah, like the woods in the first story.
Yeah, for kids especially. Woods are like this place of adventure freedom.
Right, a little bit of mischief too.
Exactly. But here they become this symbol of darkness, like something's lurking just out of sight.
And the way the grab is described, it's so sudden, so strong.
And there's no explanation,
Right, it just feeds into that primal fear of being hunted.
like being totally helpless.
And then there's the bedroom in the second story.
That should be a sanctuary.
Right, a place of safety, privacy.
But CJ just completely destroys that.
It's like he's violating something sacred,
And it happens at night.
which just makes it even scarier.
The darkness becomes a character.
Yeah, it hides his intentions.
And it feeds our imagination.
Like we're left to fill in the blanks and our minds go to the worst possible places.
It's that uncertainty that really gets under our skin.
And the stories use these sensory details to make it even worse.
Like what kind of details?
Well, in the first story, it's the crunching leaves the pressure of the hands.
Oh, yeah.
And in the second story, it's CJ's blank stare.
It's like you're right there with them.
Exactly.
Our minds are wired to look for patterns.
Right. We want to make sense of the world.
And when something doesn't fit, when something's off,
Our fear response kicks in.
these stories tap right into that.
Okay, but let's shift gears a bit. We've been talking about the fear,
Okay.
but there's also this sense of innocence lost.
Oh, yes.
Like, these aren't just scary stories. They're about these characters realizing that the world isn't as safe as they thought.
Exactly.
Like the fence in the first story.
That's such a great example.
It's like a physical barrier against the unknown.
But it also represents them trying to regain control.
And even though they keep playing, the rules have changed.
There's this new awareness of danger.
The game isn't fun anymore.
Right. It's like a veil has been lifted.
And they've seen the darker side of reality.
And that can be really tough for kids.
Because they're still figuring out the world.
Yeah.
And in CJ's story, it's even more profound.
How so?
It's not just about being scared, it's about being violated.
Oh, you're right.
Like having your boundaries crossed.
And by someone their own age.
Exactly. It's this betrayal of trust.
That can make you wary of everyone.
Yeah, it's like the world suddenly becomes this unpredictable, dangerous place.
Well, even when you try to create safe spaces.
There's always the potential for those boundaries to be broken.
That's a scary thought.
It is, but it also makes me think about hide and seek itself.
With the game.
Yeah, like beyond the stories, what is it about this game that's so universal?
That's a good question.
Like, why do we keep playing it generation after generation?
Well, I think for kids, it's about exploration.
Right, pushing boundaries.
And hide and seek lets them do that in a safe way.
But there's also that darker side,
Oh, definitely.
like hiding to avoid danger.
Or seeking to track down prey.
So it's this microcosm of the human experience.
We need safety, but we also want to explore.
Exactly. And when you add those layers onto these horror stories, it gets even more interesting.
It's like they're tapping into something deeper.
A collective unconscious.
Yeah, all those shared anxieties and fears.
It's like a global game of hide and seek.
But why the focus on the negative?
Right, why not happy memories?
Exactly.
Well, I think it goes back to the power of fear.
Oh yeah, fear gets our attention.
And when it's tied to something innocent, like a childhood game,
It becomes even more powerful.
it's like the contrast makes it stronger.
That subversion of expectations, that's what keeps us hooked.
But there's also nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, a longing for a simpler time when hide and seek was just a game.
Oh, it's
When the woods were magical and our bedrooms were safe.
a bittersweet feeling.
It is like looking back through a cracked mirror.
And that distortion, that unease.
That's what makes these stories so compelling.
Yeah, they remind us that the past isn't really gone.
It shapes who we are.
Speaking of the past,
What about it?
What about memory?
Oh, right.
Both stories rely on the storyteller's memory,
And memory can be unreliable.
especially with trauma.
Right, like the grab in the woods.
The storyteller doubts their own experience.
It's like their mind is trying to protect itself.
Yeah, to create distance from the pain.
And the story plays on that uncertainty.
We're left wondering what's real.
Is it imagination or something more sinister?
That ambiguity is key for good horror.
It leaves us with this lingering unease.
Like something's not quite right.
But you can't put your finger on it.
Exactly.
And then there's the storyteller themselves.
Right.
Both stories are personal accounts.
Shared directly by the people who live them.
That first-person perspective is so important.
It makes it feel real.
Like we're being let in on a secret.
Trusted with their fears.
And in that shared experience is what makes these stories so powerful.
It's like we're all in this together.
Yeah, connected by our fears.
And by sharing these stories,
we take back some of the power.
we acknowledge the fear, but we also confront it.
It's like a way of understanding and maybe even overcoming those fears.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about locations, innocence memory.
Storytelling.
But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
there's one more layer we need to explore.
What's that?
The psychology of the storytellers themselves.
Oh, interesting.
Let's take a closer look at that when we come back for the final part of our deep dive. We're back, and we're diving into the minds of the storytellers themselves.
Yeah, like why share these experiences?
Right, it can't just be about scaring people.
There's got to be something more,
I think it's about processing what happened.
like trying to make sense of it.
Exactly. And remember, we talked about memory,
How it can be unreliable.
especially with trauma.
So maybe by sharing these stories,
They're looking for validation.
like to confirm that what they went through was real.
Right, even if no one else believes them.
It's like saying, hey, this happened and it was terrifying.
And it connects them with others who might have had similar
This
experiences.
is a shared understanding.
Because sometimes we dismiss our own fears.
We tell ourselves we're overreacting.
But when someone else shares a similar story,
It makes it feel more real.
it gives us permission to be scared.
It's like we're not alone.
But there's also catharsis in sharing,
Like a release.
a way to let go of some of that emotional tension.
And by shaping those experiences into stories,
They're taking back control.
they're finding meaning in what happened.
So these stories aren't just about scaring us. They're about processing trauma, finding validation, seeking catharsis.
And ultimately reclaiming a sense of agency.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
Okay, so you, the listener, wanted to understand why these stories are so unsettling. We've explored the fear, the symbolism, cultural roots, the storytellers themselves.
We've covered a lot of ground.
And I think we've found some answers.
Yeah, we've seen how these stories tap into our deepest fears.
Fears of the unknown, of being watched, of losing control.
Of having our safe spaces violated.
But we've also seen how those fears can be harnessed.
How they can be transformed into something meaningful.
Something that helps us understand ourselves and the world around us.
They're like a journey into darkness.
But we come out the other side.
Stronger.
And that's the beauty of storytelling.
It allows us to explore the full spectrum of human experience.
From the terrifying to the sublime.
And it reminds us that even in the face of fear, there's always hope.
Always a story to be told.
Exactly.
So the next time you hear a creepy hide-and-seek story,
Remember, it's more than just a scare.
it's a glimpse into the depths of human experience.
A reminder of our vulnerabilities.
And our resilience.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling.
To connect us, to challenge us, and to illuminate the world around us.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive,
We hope you've enjoyed this exploration.
and that you'll continue to seek, question, and share your own stories.
Even the scary ones.
Until next time, keep those lights on.
And remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.